Welcome to First Responder Financial Freedom Podcast. We talk to first responders all over the nation who are investing and working on businesses outside their first responder jobs. Our goal is to motivate and educate each other and help provide a better financial understanding for a better future. Now here are your hosts, Mike Webb, Tyler Thrush, and Aaron Foster.
All right, guys, welcome back. Today you got Tyler, myself, and our buddy from Southern California, Nick Jones, who retired about a year ago from the Santa Monica Fire Department, Southern California. And now he is full-time doing his ground-up construction company. And we're going to chat a little bit today about what that looks like on the job, transitioning into retirement, and what new construction may look like, at least from his perspective. So, Nick, thanks for joining us and welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Really excited about being here. Big time follower of you guys, and I appreciate having me on.
Yeah, there's a dozen of you guys out there in the wild following this, but we certainly appreciate it. So, Nick, just if you would maybe kind of give everybody the basic, like, hey, I'm Nick. This is kind of from high school or college time frame to the fire department and how that led to where you're at today. And then we'll sit there and kind of parse out pieces of it after that.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, so I grew up in the same area, this Ventura County area. Went to high school out here. During high school, I kind of knew I wanted to be a firefighter, but my dad my dad was in the trade, so I grew up around all that, the construction kind of piece. So I worked for pretty much all of his buddies. So if it was framing one day to electrical the next day, whatever they needed, I was out there. Really kind of cut my teeth into the framing side of it. Worked for general contractors kind of during the day, and by night I was taking fire classes and trying to get hired by the fire department. So it was kind of a conflict there. It was just a balancing act between being a full-time employee in construction there for a while and then going to school at night. And then once I got hired with the fire department, I was like, I'll never go back to the construction or the trades. And it wasn't too long after that I started having to itch, the working outside, the, being able to, be done at 3:30, get back to the family, those type things. So I started dabbling back into construction while I was a full-time firefighter. I think it was like after medic school where I came back and I was riding on a rescue, running calls all night long. And I was like, how do you make more money? And it's like, well, you work more shifts. So it was kind of during that time I started having that like feeling where, my most valuable asset, my time, was being, just sold for dollars. So I started doing construction. My wife had a real estate license. We started flipping houses on our own, working with investors on small scale stuff, doing remodels for people, buying our own houses, fixing them up and moving, that type model. And then it grew pretty quickly. So linked up with an investor, started doing high-end residential flips in the area. That kind of spilled into higher, bigger dollar amount construction projects for end users. And during that whole time, I was still a full-time firefighter. So I've kind of gone through the gamut of like lots of employees to multiple partners to getting a partner that was a firefighter so we could be available at different times. All those things were great, but it was difficult, and it became increasingly difficult to balance both. But I always had that kind of mindset. If everything failed in construction, I always had the fire department. And it just hit me one day where I realized it was the limiting factor. Like I finally got to the spot where I can't be as successful and do the things I really feel like I was put here to do while working there. So it finally hit me one day, and I kind of set a plan. I had some time to leave. I had some sick time, vacation time, kind of gave me several months to kind of get everything organized. And I jumped in both feet and I left the fire department July of last year. And I'm 45, so I really got like a 5-year window that I don't receive any kind of benefits from my retirement or anything like that. So I'm kind of in this thing full speed, the full brunt of health insurance. I have a family of 2 kids, my wife and I, and so all those things are real and they're scary. And but definitely worked through those to where I'm at now. And currently, we're building a big 20,000 square foot single story up in the Potrero Valley area, just inland from Malibu. It's a spec build that we're building with an investor that will be selling hopefully the end of the summer.
Okay, so there a lot of little stops along that trip that we could talk about.
Yeah, for sure.
So you were in the fire service, you said about 20 years?
Yeah, for some small little like private kind of fire departments with Santa Monica for over 20 years. Yeah.
Yeah, the California model sometimes is confusing to me because you pretty much do you have to go to a fire academy in order to get hired for a lot of these small municipalities? And then like if you get picked up by a bigger department, they put you through their own. Is that how that
Yep.
works?
Yeah, pretty much
You
exactly.
guys
Yeah.
call it the tower or whatever, right?
Tower,
Yeah.
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 I went through
Yeah,
like a private fire department out here, like an Oxnard Fire Academy. And then when you get hired, you usually go through, the department specific tower.
Okay. Yeah, we call it recruit school or the academy, same concept.
Yeah.
So cool, man. So you were basically thrown to the wolves to learn the trades, basically because of your family, correct?
Yeah.
Your father.
Yeah.
And man, that's like probably at the time, maybe you did. I can't say I would have realized the benefit that would have provided me later on in life. But I bet now looking back, you're like, wow, I'm very fortunate to have been exposed to that because, it's, I don't know how it is in California, but at least locally, it's very difficult to find skilled labor, reliable labor, affordable labor. And you just need like some combination of those to make this business work. And that is a challenge, man. Big challenge.
Yeah. The sleepless nights in the fire department running calls are now replaced by sleepless nights of like hiring the right people, getting rid of the wrong people, job site. It's a give and take, but yeah, I think in the trades, if you're consistent and you do what you say, you can have a very successful path in construction. But there's challenges with that, the hiring and employees and all those kind of things are, the challenges now that I replaced other things with. But as you growing in your company, I mean, I'm a guy who was very comfortable rolling out tools and doing all the work myself to, not doing that and trusting other people and hiring the right people and putting them in the right spots, building out an office staff, the overhead stuff. It's
what does your staff look like now?
I got one office gal. I got two project managers who one of them's brand new and it's been great, really, really helping out. Because we're still doing some homeowner based stuff. We're doing some commercial work. So we're still doing a lot of stuff that's outside of like probably where we're going with more of the development, working with investors. So we're still, once I left the fire department, I really said no to nothing. And then I just figuring out how to get it all done. So kind of a little bit of a shotgun at first. When you first leave, I think you kind of have this, like, I got to do everything, and make sure you're successful. And now I'm kind of narrowing things back in. We don't do any like small remodels anymore. If they live in the house, it's probably not for us. We move pretty quickly. We're not going to want to worry about Junior's nap schedule and Fluffy getting out the front door. It's just those type remodels are they're challenging. I mean, they're tough to do because there's a lot of expectations and a lot of, they're really hiring me. So it's hard to scale yourself in that model. So we're definitely like pushing ourselves into the larger development stuff, ground up, something that looks like a hill turns into a graded lot in a house. That's kind of where we're heading.
So you said sorry, Tyler, I'm not going to keep cutting you off.
You're fine.
You said you're doing a spec house. Just for those maybe not familiar with that term, what exactly is that? And then could you kind of like walk us through that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll keep it simple. So basically, my investment group and myself purchased a piece of land. We're building it to their specific specs that, we've laid out on a plan, and we're going to resell it. So it doesn't really have an end user yet, but we're building it with designers and, people like that. So the whole idea is to try to, build it for the masses, although this is, a crazy 20,000 square foot mansion, some, a trophy style home, but we will be selling it here in the end of the year, if not sooner.
That's the interesting part too. Like a lot of house flippers like ourselves start off with entry-level homes, smaller projects, not full gut rehabs, and you slowly work your way up. And then on the building side, my dad has done a lot of that as well, not like as being the actual end investor, but they built a lot of spec homes in Shady Canyon, stuff like that, where the housing prices
Yeah.
approach 10, 15, $20 million for a sale. And it's interesting, like you said, 20,000 square feet. You got to be dialed at that point. You got to know what finishes they want, all of these things, because that's a premium product, and it's such an interesting a market niche to me, because you have to be spot on. Um, as you grew through the trades, did you ever think that you wanted to go bigger, or like you said, because of the issues that you ran into with the smaller remodels, things like that? It's like, how can I do less while making as much or more than what I'm currently making?
Yeah, it's a great question, because you would people start, like you said, bathroom remodels in someone's house, which to me is almost more difficult than building a new house, and because you're dealing with a house that's built, plans might not match, you open up walls, there's been additions, things don't work, you're trying to put new to old, those things are difficult. And then you're dealing with a client, a homeowner, their space, it's personal, where you're doing the ADUs are those things that a lot of them are removing from there's not a lot of people doing those bathroom kitchens right now, and that's why they're costing so much, because they're difficult to do because you're in people's personal spaces. And a lot of those people with the ADU in California, man, they're popping up everywhere. So that's kind of where I was doing a lot of those for a while. But to be honest, like, there's less of my time needed on some of these projects when they're larger like that, and there's no real end user, and we're building and we're designing the thing in a day. And if that tile is not available, we'll pick something similar to it, versus waiting 6 weeks for a tile that looks very similar to what they chose and wait for it. So you eliminate a lot of the difficulties with like moving things. And you know how this construction stuff works. It's all on schedule. So if I have my drywall guy lined up, but the shower valve and some of the finished electrical stuff or anything I need to put in behind the walls not here and ready, I can't get tile on, I can't get drywall on. So, those are the things that, make it a lot easier when you're kind of influencing the design, and it's a scalable model versus, just doing the end user kind of construction, because they really are hiring you and they want to see you and help them with those decisions. So we still do it. It's just larger, like probably, significant remodels where they move out of the house all the way down to studs kind of thing, or large additions where they're offsite, or an ADU or something where they're not physically in that space. Like we're doing an ADU with a basement currently. They live in the house, but yeah, it's my own entrance, my own hours, kind of get in and out and not have to worry too much about their personal space and time.
Yeah, and ADUs in California, especially, I mean, they've removed so much red tape. I feel like, because we have such a housing shortage, I feel like that aspect has blown up significantly. And we've had Derek Sherrill on here. He's that ADU guy, and he's always
Yeah.
posting stuff. But it's interesting. So you said that you actually have had a large demand, because I've always been curious, like on the brokerage side or the lending side, they're pushing stuff like that because they feel like there's a need. So you are seeing quite a bit as far as the ADU development goes.
Yeah, I mean, some of these cities and some of these jurisdictions, they almost have like an express line for them. I mean, so many people are putting these in because the restrictions and the requirements have changed. They were so hard to get for so long, and now you don't need covered parking, you don't need the carport, you don't need any of that. You can basically just convert your existing garage. So there's so much of that happening. We're seeing a lot of these large lots with smaller homes where they're converting the garage and then also adding a secondary ADU. So they're turning these single families kind of into triplexes. And it's kind of how, in where I live, the housing market's kind of gone crazy, and it's tough to make these investments work. But when you make it a triplex, the numbers start working. So I didn't tell you before, I do own quite a bit of rental properties too. I've been buying, like, with money that I was making early on with construction, I was just reinvesting into rental properties. So I do own, I want to say, like about 36 doors, mixture of like single families to fourplexes to like a 116 unit apartment building, kind of Kern County, where the cash flow made sense. So I've been doing that. I used to like heavily do the construction, but as I've grown, I've backed away from that a little bit, but those are, managed. But yeah, I kind of look at these real estate deals as investment opportunities too, when we do some of these things.
So are you managing the portfolio in-house, or is that something you outsource?
What do you mean, just managing from? I have property managers. Yeah, local ones I manage myself, and then I have like a property management company, and then I have bookkeepers and back end people that are kind of helping me keep track of all that. But yeah.
Nice.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's been good. I
By
started buying
the
those.
way,
Yeah, I started buying those in 2010, 11, so all of them made sense. The ones I turned down and said no, if I could go back, it just wasn't perfect,
don't even
Knowing
get me
what I know
started.
now, I know it's hard, but fortunate I said yes just enough to at least have a foot in the game there a little bit.
Yeah, hindsight's 2020, man, and just think the next time you see some of those, or even somewhat resemble some of those things we've seen over the last 10 or so years, you're like, I've seen this before. I know what I remember Tyler saying something about his aunt mentioning whenever the rates were basically super low, like go put debt on everything because you're never going to
Yes.
see interest rates like this again. And at the time, you're like, yeah, but it's supposed to go from 3 to 2.5. I'm going to wait. Now it's like, I'm ready to flip this desk. Like, come on, man, I should have bought
she had no
everything that
hesitation.
remotely could have covered the. Yeah, it's but she had seen it probably before or something similar, and that's how I basically cope with missing out on all of the
Yes.
deals. That if I wouldn't have wholesaled, sold it, flipped it, and just would have said yes, oh my god. But yeah,
I know.
what
Well,
a
when you come out of that 2008, 2009, 10, when you're right in there, you don't know how quick that is again. And that's what I was always basing
yeah.
kind of my decisions on. And sometimes I fought with myself and kind of talked myself into not pulling the trigger on something, assuming like that was right around the corner with real no facts other than like just experiencing what went through it.
Yeah,
So,
and watching the news or something.
yes, yeah, like exactly. Like so many deals I just passed up on that were, so close, but now look at them, they're like would have been grand slams. But
Yeah. It's easy to look back now and say that. At the time, everybody says, and not that there's necessarily blood in the streets, but like you want to buy and make money when there's blood in the streets, or some combination of that saying. But it's very difficult to have the mentality, like you said, just coming out of 08 and 09. That's not long after I got on the job. And I remember almost losing my job not long after getting it because of the financial crisis we were in. So it was very difficult to sit there and be like, oh, I'm going to go buy 3 more houses. I mean, I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to buy the house we just wrote an offer on, because I didn't know if I was going to have a job. So it's easy right now to have that frame of reference or that mindset like, oh, I should have done this. But at the time, the amount of uncertainty that was in the marketplace, like you didn't know what was going to transpire. I'm sure obviously some of these Michael Berry and Bloomberg type folks understood it, but I didn't. I was, like you said, I was just like still raw and fresh. Like I didn't know like the world was going to end the next day, like I wasn't going to go buy stuff, but anyways.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same thing. And I think the fire station talk and all that kind of stuff, it could talk you out of
Oh
anything.
God.
Like and even some people with a lot of experience and understanding and knowledge and wisdom would be like, they could talk you out of things. And I look back on it and like, they were right about a lot of things, but there was some negativity things there too that I'm like, man, I shouldn't even listen to that. But
yeah. And the episode last week, we talked about perspective and mindset with Dan Satowski, and we basically kind of alluded to that. You have to be very careful about your mindset and this, what you allow into that space, because, I love sitting around the firehouse, chatting with the guys, but you have to just be very aware of like who and what advice you're taking and what their track record would suggest. Right.
Yep.
And there's really great guys. I mean, obviously, like we interview a lot of them. There's a lot in the group that are just very forward thinkers, very aggressive, very optimistic. And then there's a much larger group that is the negative Nancy's. And I always joke, like you could give them $100 and they would bitch that it was in ones. Like they'd find a reason to complain about it, like, so it's just be very
contagious.
careful about your perspective, man. Exactly. Because optimism is contagious and so is pessimism. And, if you've ever worked on a shift where it's got a couple guys that are pretty pessimistic, you can see how it basically becomes like a cancer to that shift or firehouse. And on the flip side, if you got some go-getters, you can kind of see what that does for those guys that are like a swing state voter. They're either going to be really shitty if they're with the bad group, or they're going to be really good if they're with the good group. Same thing with employees, I think.
For sure. And I fell into both of those, like I could tell you the same thing, sitting at the table and like you hear it and then you jump in and you're like part of the negativity and then you're like, wait a minute. And then
I think if everybody's honest, in a 15 to 20 year career, it's going to happen. So, you know, like you're going to have some ebbs and flows, right? Like over a long enough time horizon, like you're going to have some times where you're more positive and more negative than others. Like it is what it is.
Yeah. And when I left the fire department, I have no negativity at all. I mean, it gave me everything I have. I mean, that job was why I am here. You know, for 20 years, I kind of was doing stuff behind the scenes and people knew I was doing. It wasn't like I was hiding it, but I just couldn't come out and shout and yell what I was doing. But I look back on my career and I mean, I'm blessed. I work with great people doing great things, you know, being a paramedic for 20 years, like all the stuff that's gone through. I mean, it's, you look back on it and it's just right around the corner, but you look at it and you go, this was an incredible experience. And it's built me and my foundation and kind of understanding people and real life decisions and stuff. It really does build out who you are. So, you know, I look at it like as a positive. You know, I probably wish I would have left a little sooner, you know, if I looked at anything, and probably left, like, maybe I didn't say anything before, like, just, hey, I know some people thought I was trying to leave earlier and stuff like that. Just enjoy the ride. And when it's time, you kind of know, you know, you just kind of feel it when it's the right time to go. You know, it's nerve wracking for a couple months.
To that point, it's a private conversation, so I won't say who it is, but this guy left and he said the same thing, that he had been thinking about it. And it was a lot of fear-based stuff like, oh, if I leave, I'm never going to be able to consistently replicate what I'm getting through the fire department in terms of benefits, things like that. Even though what was happening on the outside in his business was consistently true month over month. Do you think, and to Mike's point of mindset, I love talking about mindset. Do you think a large part of that is just that mindset of, we're brought up in the area where it's a great job. It's a great career, actually, not even a job. It's a great career, super stable. It's like the zenith of like public safety positions. You know, it's like you've made it, and then why would you ever leave that? Which can be like, it's counterintuitive, right? And a lot of people do question it. But do you think a lot of that is the fear that's built in because of all those reasons? Like at that point, you were obviously ready to leave. You were thinking about it, and you're like, well, hey, I'm financially, I'm able to leave and not necessarily take a hit, and you know that in a few years your CalPERS will kick in, stuff like that. But do you think fear was a major factor in that?
100%. Yeah, I mean, I think it's so hard to get the job, right? We do all these things, we do all these, we do everything we possibly can to put ourselves in the best position. We do all these mock interviews finally, and you get hired, and you're like, I'm done, I'm set. And then I think in different places, especially where I work, they have constant staffing there. It's crazy, the amount of shifts and the requirements, and you start thinking that way. And then, but you're like, this is what I do. I don't like, this is how I make my money. It's how I support my family. And then the benefits we all know are great, and the retirement's great. I think the retirement piece of it's pretty tough. You're like, I have buddies in, you know, business that they flip who their boss is every other year, you know. But when you're talking about a pension and those type of things, like it's a real difficult thing to work through. And then the environment that you're in also isn't about leaving early. Like, you know, everybody does their 30 years or whatever it takes, and they leave. So I think you battle that, and then you look at what you have and what the job's created for you, and the house you live in, and the time that you have with your family, and you start like going, well, this is what I do. So yeah, I think it's completely a fear going through the process. It was significant. I mean, like, now there's no every 2 weeks the check comes, whether I'm, you know, on vacation, whatever. It just shuts down. And it's weird how, like, one day you're there, and then one day you can't log into anything. You're off to, no checks come, no one checks in. You know, it's just you. So it is. But since then, I've gotten so many people to reach out, and I think the fire service, in my opinion, is changing a lot. I've been there long enough to see what it was kind of like when it was kind of like a good old boys club, to where it is now, where it's kind of a business, and things are changing, and the demand on the employees changing, and the environment's changing, and going through investigations, all that stuff. Like, a lot of people have been reaching out like, hey, how'd you do it? What did you do? You know, people that I never thought would have any interest ever leaving are kind of reaching out and asking, you know, a lot of really good questions, because I made a lot of mistakes leaving. Like, I definitely learned a lot when I left, like how you should navigate this and what things look like. But yeah, I mean, it's a scary process, but I think once you get to the other side, the numbers, this whole insurance thing, they're real, and they are scary. But I think if you have a plan and you know how to, you have something that you can do on the outside that can generate some money or a skill set, it's really achievable.
The identity thing is something we've talked about several times, and I have not crossed the bridge that you have yet, but I definitely, to steal a line or a thought, I don't know if anybody else hears that, but it's like back feed or something. Jocko Willink always talks about it in the context of folks in the military, and I was not in the military, but it's just something that I would think has some parallel. You have to, when you leave that line of work, you have to find a new purpose or a new mission. And if yours is the construction company, it's showing up for your employees, it's building, like you have a new purpose. And I think if you go into that new life and for 20 years you've wore this uniform, you've checked this equipment this way on this day, this is, like you just go from a very regimented life to
Yes.
to nothing. I think that's where you could probably start to go in the wrong direction. So I kind of just think about that, like what that will look like when that time comes. And truthfully, it's easy to say, but I think whenever I have to practice it, it's going to be a little more difficult. Like I have a mission per se, like I have a business, I have folks that depend on me outside of the fire department to provide. So like I think I'll be able to transition it. Okay, that's my mic. All right, I'll push some buttons here, but yeah, it's just one of those things. I think it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, one thing I'll tell you too, when you work a shift schedule like we all do, your family and they have a very unique setup when you're not there. Like they have their time and their way, and then all of a sudden you're home all the time, and that's an adjustment too. Like with your family and kid. Now I really got tired of watching my kids' games through FaceTime and cameras on field. So I'm so blessed to be at everything. I don't miss anything anymore. It's like the only time I miss it is because they're in different spots, right? But it's a change in your life as far as like you're going to be home every night, and you haven't done that, especially on the fire side. That you're kind of getting into stuff that like you're home every night. They don't have their special little time, so there's an adjustment at home as well, and then trying to like shake out some of the stuff that you're talking about, that really regimen, like the house might get a little messy when you're not there for 3-4 days, and they clean it up before you get there. But now every night, so you just gotta, there's like a personal adjustment to being home every night, being present. But man, am I blessed, and I've never had so many dinners with the family and be able to communicate with the kids. I really feel like I'm more connected to my kids. Like I thought I was, but when you realize like, man, you're gone a lot, so it's been an adjustment that's been just absolutely a blessing to be as involved in, it's scary, but it's been great.
Yeah, I think people underestimate that whole being home every day thing versus being gone 10 to 15 days a month. So I agree. I think it's an adjustment, but a lot of benefits that I didn't realize until afterwards. Like, oh man, this is actually really cool. So I agree with you.
Yeah.
To transition a little bit and just kind of thinking of how we can provide value to everybody that's listening. A lot of the guys are trades oriented. They're good at like, let's say they can weld, they're plumbing, electrician, framing, like you said, roofing, whatever it is. So let's say somebody's currently, in one of the trades, off duty, and maybe they're thinking about progressing to the next step or planning an exit if that's what they really wanted to do. Was there anything that when you took this from like a side hustle, we'll call it, to a legitimate business, are there a few things that you maybe want to go over? Like maybe talk about things that you did that guys can avoid, or things that you did that actually worked out really well and you think it would benefit them to do these things?
Yeah, I mean, it's a challenge, right? Because your time's being taken with the fire department, and then you're trying to scale a business and build things, and you still have, most of these guys probably have families and stuff. So it's that balance of your time. And what I think if I could look back and do things differently, some of the mistakes I made, I really devalued my time. So I would work, and go straight from the fire station and then work and then go home and work on my business and miss stuff. And there was people and processes and stuff that could have been taken care of earlier on by people that weren't me. I think hiring people to do things that are hourly wage type jobs. I think when your mindset's a firefighter, you don't like overhead and cost and, payroll, and those things are scary. I think if I could go back and if I would advise people, if they're in, especially single trade, because if you're doing one thing over and over, there's a lot of systems and processes you can build in that. Or general contracting is a little bit difficult because you're dealing with, you're tied into something for a year and a half to build these things. And there's so many things that change from project to project. But single trade specifically, like you mentioned, if you could build systems that replace your time and put people in places they don't necessarily need to be, or you need to be, where you can actually grow your company. I think if I could have done things a little differently, I probably would have kind of built from the inside instead of just taking all that stuff and handling it myself and handling, from every estimate to every job walk to every single project management. I was doing all the construction. I was doing it all, where I think if I could go back, I'd look at it from what I've learned and probably put more people in places and pay people and secretaries and stuff that can handle the administrative work, project manager work, and take some of that load off. I would have grown quicker and had a little bit easier transition. Because I think when you finally leave and then you go, well, I have all the time now, you just add more work. I thought once I left the fire department, that would be great. But what happened was I took on more projects. I still had the same problems with my time. So I've really focused in this year trying to add the right people, hire slow, fire quick kind of thing, and make sure that the people, are the right fits for the positions that I have them for. But yeah, I think that would be the biggest thing if you're looking at doing this, is to set up the systems where you can kind of pull yourself out of it so you can work, on the business and not so much in it.
So you're the guy you're a one-man band. What's the first hire?
I think in single trade, you need somebody to kind of replace you out in the field so you can work on your business. So like that first layer of supervision, if you're a plumbing contractor, you don't have to go to every single job every single day, and you can actually go estimate and sell jobs. I think that first layer of like project manager, superintendent person, but I would say that person with a great office person is huge. Like I was reluctant to hire an office person because I'm like, I can do this. I should have done that a long time ago. Like if there's anything, like it just alleviates so much headache and stress. And it also gives you like a layer of like somebody else checking, looking at the finance. Even I had a bookkeeper in the back end, they're just data entry, but actually somebody in here who's looking at all the contracts and making sure that the payments are correct. And I'd get there and I'm like, you'd write a check and assume that it was accurate, but you wouldn't refer back to the contract, and there'd be a change order for something that was already in the contract. So building those systems with that, I would say that the first level of supervision that can kind of replace you in the field, and then a person to help you in the office, those two, I don't know, it's a coin flip between those two. And it's really just to justify more of your time. Like you get your time back so you can work on instead of in.
And then after, and like Mike said, what do you call them? Chucking a truck, right? You graduate from that, and then now, like you said, you're able to look and say, oh, I can scale this. Now, instead of one person in the office, I can do two. Instead of one guy in the field, I can do 2 or 3. Or what I see a progression in, single trade will then go get their GC's license.
Yeah.
And then now they're like, oh, wait a minute. If I can do this with just my trade, as long as we keep everything else on the same type of system, I can be the GC. And then that opens up a whole nother world of possibilities. And you may have said it, and I may have missed it. Since you were with the fire department, have you always been a GC at some point during that journey? Or did you become a GC, or since you left, were you a GC?
No, I've had it while I was there. Yeah.
Okay.
It was, not many knew, just because the conflict, and they had competing, they wanted you to know what you're doing. You had to apply for outside employment, and it was really an hour thing. So I've had it a long time, but I just kind of, now everybody knows, close friends and people that I worked with, sure, they knew, and I was helping them out on projects, but yeah, I've had it, I don't know, since 2010, maybe something like that.
Okay. Very cool. And then you said that now you guys are doing spec houses, bigger projects. And you said that you're taking the profits, and are you still actively reinvesting those profits into any type of real estate investments? Have you kind of shifted, or the profit that you're making on those deals is what's becoming your investment per se?
You cut out a
Does
little
that
bit
make
there. I
sense?
didn't hear the
Oh,
question. You cut out a little bit. I didn't hear the
you,
question perfectly.
okay. So you said you had 36 stores, and now you guys are currently doing spec homes and things like that. And you mentioned that was because you took the profits from the deals that you were currently working on, reinvested into real estate. Is that still occurring, or are you taking those profits and reinvesting them into new spec homes, into the business?
It's I haven't been buying more rental properties recently. I don't know, because we were leveraging and stuff in the interest rates, and it's just hard to make the numbers work, especially in California. Um, it's tough just because there's a lot of equity in some of the ones I have, but I can't refinance them. And then even, exchanging them for something else, I'm dealing with the new interest rate. A lot of these were sub 3 interest rates, so like on an investment property. So it's like, you're kind of tied. So you look at those performance and you look at those deals, it's hard to make things make sense now. So, that's why I like the flipping and buying and the quick cash. The tax is just much more difficult to get through. But yeah, we haven't been adding a lot of rental properties of late. I don't know, maybe that changes. Hopefully we see some things that make sense. I think where I add value is the value add stuff, right? My wife's a real estate agent. She helps find deals. She's also an ER nurse, but one day a week. But we could find the deals, right? And then we could kind of control the money, and then obviously construction, we can build cheaper than anyone. So there's a lot of value in that, but it's just hard right now with interest rates and just a lot of stuff's not moving. And we were mostly in the small multi-door, and not single families, just because, vacancy and the numbers worked out, and, where were we investing just to cash flow. So I think eventually that'd be the plan. Like, obviously some of that mailbox money is, people ask me all the time, to me, that's the best kind of income you can have. I mean, I get a monthly report on those properties and a check, and it's really, really where I'd like to focus some of these returns. But I think right now it's tough. I don't know if you guys are finding anything.
No, same boat. I mean, right now, if you see an opportunity, it's got to be pretty much some level of value add, which, not that it wasn't before, but now it really has to be some value add some way. As far as the new construction goes, this is all residential that you're doing?
Yeah, the development stuff. Yeah, we do have some commercial projects. We're doing like a doctor's clinic and stuff like that. More of just, I mean, when your question was, what am I doing with the money I'm making? I mean, I think once I actually sold a rental property, and if you do that and you don't exchange it, and they ask for the taxes later, it hurts. Like it's a big number, but then when you have to pay it, it's a really big number. So I kind of am positioning myself, just because I don't have the W-2 income that I was receiving from the fire department. I've kind of like a little more careful with purchasing. So I am still doing some like construction projects for commercial and end users and stuff like that, just almost to keep everything going. Because a lot of these deals, these investment deals, these developments, I'm invested in the back end. So there might not be much profit for me throughout the process until they sell. So yeah, we're keeping our foot on the gas pedal on some of that stuff.
So you're building spec homes, but you're also participating in development. So like they're coming in, they're putting the roads in, the infrastructure, and then basically track homes. Are you then building in those developments, or are you only focused on the bigger ones?
So everything that we're doing right now is like large trophy spec homes. So like the one that we're currently got, it's a 200-acre parcel that was developed into 10 lots. And so there's 9 houses there. We purchased the last one. Now it needed to be graded and all that stuff. It was like the driveways there, but that's about it. So everything else, from getting utilities and everything like that. So yeah, ground up development stuff is what we're doing. Not track homes or anything like that. Just one-off crazy elite trophy type homes.
Do you worry about that market given the current environment with interest rates and just inflation and whatnot? Do you feel that where you're at, it's probably not nearly the same as for me, but you're sitting there at a 20,000 square foot house on 200 acres or whatever it is. I can't imagine is cheap in California. But like, what is that? Does that make you more nervous investing
You know
that
what?
kind of money
No.
into a house like that?
Well, I mean, of course, yeah, your buying pool is very, 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 very small. But the interest rates make no difference. Like nobody finances these deals. So to me, more the stock market, right? If somebody lost half their net worth in the stock market, they might not want to pull the trigger on a $30 million house. So that to me, but yeah, I mean, you're not dealing with a large buying pool. So you're talking about a very elite group of people that can purchase these homes. The expenses associated with this house is like more than I could ever even I couldn't afford the water bill, right? So some of these things are pretty crazy, but they're proven, right? There's 9 houses, they're high net earners. There's a lot of young money. A lot of people buying like these houses get sold, for cash, like nothing, foreign money, domestic, all over. So there's always a concern to sell these. Like that's, because you're not appealing to the masses. You're really a selective group, and there's a lot of entertainment and stuff in there. It's in a very, it's a very exclusive area. So this one, it's got 360 degrees with ocean views. It's pretty spectacular. It's a kind of purchase that somebody's got to have it. It just has to find the right person who, a lot of these, they don't end up living in it. They're second homes and stuff like that.
which is crazy, right? How,
Huh?
if you don't mind, how do you? I mean, is this just a traditional construction loan that you guys are using? Are you using your private money investors so there's a lot less volatility there? That to me, I think would make me feel more secure if I knew I had private money and I knew everything. If I bought it, it penciled out. And to your point, a lot of those big deals are all handled with cash by the end buyer. There's a little bit more security, and I'm guessing the spread as well is going to be bigger on something like that. So you maybe have a little bit more room for error or market
Right.
adjustment.
Yeah. I mean, a couple things there. First, yeah, the money's cheap because it's not loaned. It's part of the deal. And then the second part is building costs. They do change when you're building, multi-million dollar house. I mean, just the finishes are different, but not relative to what you're going to get price per square foot on the exit. So we always find places where, this will probably be 2,000 to 2,500 a square foot, right? So those numbers make sense. It doesn't cost me, to build $1 million house or a $20 million house. They're not much different in build cost, if that makes sense. So that spread you're talking about is that insulation that makes you feel more comfortable, but you are a limited buying pool.
Does that include land and development, like your lot cost, or is that just the construction?
Which cost?
2,500 a square foot.
That's an exit. That's an exit.
Oh,
So that'd be an exit. That's what we'd sell it for, 2025. Malibu, I mean, there's places on the ocean that we look at that are, $6,000 to $10,000 a square foot on an exit. But no, I mean, build costs vary. I mean, we can do things in this, in a couple $100 a square foot up to, 700, depending on fit and finish and just some of the technical. If they put these houses on the side of a hill, like some of these houses got, $1 million foundation. So there's challenges with that. But to your point, you do, you insulate yourself a bit because the area demands the price per square foot on the exit. There's already houses there that have gotten these numbers. And the build cost isn't much different other than, you might have several extra kitchens and, hiring appliances and, things like that. So there's almost less risk if it makes sense than, trying to compete. And we, when we were like flipping and houses, we struggled because I wasn't willing to cover up a problem. So I knew what the house was going to go for. I knew what it needed and I knew what they sold it for. The only thing I didn't know is what, they didn't do, right? Like, so some of those lower end, like it was just tough. So with my investment group, we just started getting more into the development where we could do things all the right way and not cover up problems and things like that. So that was, why we kind of led ourselves to here. And there's risk because it's big money, but I do think like overall, like you have it's less of a risk because of the price per square foot on the exit and then what the build costs don't generally go up in the same direction when you're building, because we control the construction.
It's not like a like for like. It's not like, okay, it's going to go up as much as the housing
Correct.
price, for sure. Yeah. And then two, I was thinking about this when we were talking, is There's reports of inflation being persistent right now, and then maybe even some type of stagflation. So I'm like, oh, I'm gonna start Googling what are your best stagflation, inflation-based investments. I already knew
Yeah.
real estate was one for inflation. I was curious if it was the same for stagflation. And my point is, these people have 20, 30, 40, $50 million to spend on houses, whatever they want. They're usually fairly savvy, and they know if they buy something in this type of environment and should inflation persist, they're going to get that same return on a much bigger purchase too. I think to our scarcity mindset that we were talking about before, Mike, is I think people right now at the bottom of the market, entry level buyers, are like, oh my gosh, if I buy right now and I lose a little bit of value, it's going to be, well, nothing's going to happen unless you sell the house first off. But the mindsets are totally switched to where they're worried about losing value. Whereas most people who understand inflation and stuff like that understand that it's only going to increase in value. And I think if you're building a home for the top of the food chain, I would assume they all know that pretty well.
Yeah, I think they got some advisors. Yeah, I mean, and it's just like you said, they got some people that are saying like, "Hey, you're going to be safe," with these properties. Yeah, and it's I'm always trying to find ways to save $10,000-$20,000 here or there. And then when I talk to our investment group, it's like, well, yeah, but they might want that piece. It might just be the extra, the fully built out theater with the extra seat. Like, yeah, well, if we did this, we say 50K, but then like you take $1 million haircut day one on an offer. Like, it's that balancing of money and what people want and where they feel comfortable. You just want to check as many boxes as you possibly can on these trophy homes, because usually they got an agent who says, hey, I want all these things, like full built out gym, dual home offices, guest house, theater, all these different things. And if you miss one of those, they might not even see the property. So you want to check the boxes to get them on site so they can see, the fit and finish and how you finish these properties and the location.
I was going to say, what's some of the crazy like things that you must do at that level of home that us common folk wouldn't be familiar with? Like, it's got to have a waterfall with a koi pond in the living room, or
Yeah, I don't know if it's specific. It's funny building these homes. Like, I have a house, I got 8-foot ceilings in my house, and I'm walking through these 20-foot ceilings, 16-foot ceilings. There's nothing lower than 10-foot. So it's like, I think the toughest thing with these builds and what people I think really look for, and I have I feel like our quality's the best, right? But like, there's not one elevation change in this house. So when you go through a house that's 20 square feet, like there's the tile, the floor, everything. There's no base. Everything is perfect through this whole house. So those are challenges that I think they expect, right? Like, there's no steps, there's no threshold. It's a single story. So like tile and drywall, there's no tile returns. Everything is just perfectly in line. So I think those are the things that I think, they look at these high-end homes, and that's what you're competing against, is just the perfect fit and finish, and the design is so important. We have a designer that comes out and, some of the stuff I'm like, oh, that's going to look terrible. And then when you put it together, you're like, that's amazing, and then you go home to your normal house and you see all the normal things you live in, and you're like, the roof feels like it's close, but it's just normal ceiling. So yeah, those are the challenges.
That's what I was noticing. Like when we were walking through my dad's, those spec homes, like everything had a massage room and they had the yoga studio and the movie theater and stuff like that. And you go through this crazy grand staircase, and I'm like, man. And then you go back to your house, which is probably still a nice house, and it just feels different. Yeah. And the design element, I'm sure that's a big part of your success or failure too on this whole thing. Because if they nail it, then you're golden. But if they miss on some little things, I'm imagining those buyers are super discerning, and like you said, they know exactly what they want. So, well, very cool.
Have you ever heard of Frank McKinney? I'm sure in your space you probably have.
What's his name? I'm sorry.
Frank McKinney.
Yeah.
He looks like Tiger King, but he builds like these giant, set kind of like what you're talking about. I remember seeing his stuff like early on when I first got into investing. But
we got about 10 minutes left. Is there anything that you want to go over that we haven't discussed?
No, I mean, I really appreciate you having me on here. I think I share in your guys' kind of mission where, if people are in the public safety space, police, fire, whatever, and they're thinking about doing these things, like there's people to talk to. There's definitely ways to do it. setting yourself up for success, making that transition, it's a big deal, and it's hard, and it's scary. But there's like, I reached out to a couple people who had done it before me, and like, they were saying the same things I'm saying now. I just didn't understand it, right? Like, I didn't understand, like, it's not the end, it's the beginning. And so, I love, like, I have no problems reaching out, talking to people. A lot of guys call me now from the fire stations and some of that stuff. And, I enjoy that. I'm kind of an introvert type guy, but just started doing some networking stuff, just kind of reaching out. I just had one recently where we brought a lot of my past clients in, a lot of my like trusted subcontractors and stuff like that. And just speaking to people and trying to get out there a little bit more, being more of like an ambassador of my business, and not so much like, when are we going to get done today? Like, how much work can I get done? Where can I help? So just growing in that stuff. But if there's anybody ever, please reach out. I'm on Instagram. I got a guy helping me do that now. I kind of avoided all that for 20 something or whatever since it's been around. But like the last few years, just not posting and doing things because, the challenges of, being a professional firefighter and doing things on the outside. So yeah, that's about it.
Well, Nick, I just want to say thank you for hopping on. I definitely am intrigued. If you don't mind, whenever the house is done or whenever you guys are ready, would you mind sharing some pictures in the Facebook group? I mean,
Yeah,
maybe the
absolutely.
buyer, the one, is in our group.
No one, it's a retired firefighter somewhere.
Yeah.
Ian Horowitz.
Got a bunch of
Ian
Bitcoin or
Horowitz is
something.
gonna buy it.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So-
No, yeah, definitely. What is my Instagram? It's a lot of that stuff's posted on there. I don't know if you guys.
Dirty hussy slut. No, that's not it.
What is it? That's a good one. It's Nick Jones Construction. So yeah, I post a lot of stuff on there. Like, I don't post any of it though. I'm like I have a guy that kind of helps me with it. He told me stop. I was trying. He's like, you're awful. My son was helping me. He's like,
Yeah, honestly,
being on
the
these-
best thing you could do is get like a 13-year-old, be like, here, just handle this for me.
That's it. That's my son's age right there, 13. So yeah, me getting away from that's probably the best thing I did, because I'm looking at what I used to post and what's on there now. It's drastically better. So.
Oh,
But
you
yeah,
can
no,
see
I'd
the
love
house
to,
you guys are building.
get together if you guys are ever out in the area. I know, Tyler, you're close.
Absolutely, and I'm actually going to start speaking of a new mission, like because of what's happened to me and stuff like that, and wanting to help guys out. Even if necessarily they don't want to do it, but maybe that change has been forced upon them. I've been starting to think about holding stuff, LA, so we can get San Diego, Orange County, LA, Ventura, all those guys out, and just kind of network, hang out, and help build each other up. Because I know, I don't think now, I know that's going to be a big part of my mission moving forward, is helping people that are in similar situations succeed.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd love to do it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, anything, man. I'd love to get together and check out what you guys are doing.
Perfect.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us, Nick. I greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. All right, guys. Until next week. Catch you later.